Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody. Some people don't know what that story is for. They just know it's a story. But I can tell you that AI has figured that out already. AI has already adopted the idea that if I tell a story first, I can close a sale. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. You probably want to be engaged with this one.
Think storytelling's just for bedtime? Nah, it's the secret sauce for business magic. Stuck in a rut with bland pitches and yawning clients? Enter Boost Your Business with Story Power. 6 weeks of epic storytelling training. It's like leveling up in a video game but for your career. Master the art of narrative and watch connections blossom like a viral TikTok. Simple, impactful, and game-changing. Ready to transform your biz vibes? Dive in now and make storytelling your superpower.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. It really amazes me how powerful AI has already become. I want you to consider for a moment, from a leadership perspective, what it means to be able to read people. I mean, as long as I've been involved in leadership, I've heard about the studies, I've participated in the training classes. There are people in the John Maxwell team who went another step level higher and became certified DISC trainers. They understand the profiles of people. Now, I've read through that, I've done the study, I've used it a couple of times in teaching, but I'm not a certified DISC profile person. I've also used the Strength Finders tool. I'm not a certified Strength Finders person. I've also used the Florence Lidtower and the colors and the animals, and I'm not certified in any of those. But I've studied all of them. I also studied people like Chase Hughes, Andrew Bustamante, other people who have been involved from the FBI like Chris Voss to the CIA like Andrew Bustamante or Sean Ryan, who have mastered the skills of reading people. From their facial expressions and their facial features, the size and shape of their ears, the position of their eyes, the position and angle of their eyebrows, all of those things will tell you something very, very quickly before they ever begin to speak. Now, because we know that humans have studied other humans for this purpose for such a long time, we know that there's a whole lot of, big word, the big D word, there's a lot of data about these realities. And we know, because there's a lot of data about these realities, that if you could put together the mind of Chase Hughes and Andrew Bustamante, Chase Hughes' book is like 7 reams of paper. It's that much information on human behavior and how through linguistics alone you can manipulate someone's inner mind, their subconscious mind, to do something, to say something, to behave uncharacteristically in a way that you want them to. Hypnosis can do that. But see, before you start that process, you have to understand the human that you're dealing with. For years in leadership, we've always said, you can't just lead everybody the same. In fact, I think it was maybe as far back as Dale Carnegie, which would have been over 100 years ago, the statement was made, part of our problem with education is that we put the fish and the birds in the same class and then expect them to perform to the same test. And fish are really terrible at flying, and birds not so good at swimming. When it comes to tree climbing, the squirrels got them all beat. But you can't put a fish in squirrel school and expect them to succeed. What does that really mean? Well, you got to understand the potential, the makeup, the characteristic of the human that you're dealing with. Part of the challenge we have in leadership today is that we've come to this place where we believe, like education has since the turn of the last century, if we just line them up in little rows and teach them all exactly the same thing, at the end of the day, regardless what you put in the front, what comes out the back will be the same. That's why we have this bizarre thing called standardized testing. Really what we're testing is conformity. Really what we're testing is compliance. Can you memorize and regurgitate what we put in front of you? Well, that process, that habit, that not taking the time to read the human, to understand their quirks, their idiosyncrasies, their preferences, not looking at their eyebrows and going, okay, I better understand how you think, and so let me speak to you in the language that you process thought. As a communicator and a coach of communicators, that's one of the things that I really have to work deeply on with people that I work with. I recently joined a new community, and in that community, the person that invited me in, that leads the community, said, hey, I'm going to put you in a breakout room. I want you to kind of lead people with what you teach about storytelling. And ironically, everybody that jumped in the group already fancies themselves as quite the storyteller. And I thought, well, it's interesting that they would come over here to learn something about storytelling, but walk in saying, well, I'm already a phenomenal storyteller. I don't know what you're going to tell me, but impress me. That's like walking up to a comedian and go, tell me a joke, funny man, be funny. Generally speaking, that's not how it works. However, there was someone in that group that insisted on telling a story that they said has been repeated by hundreds of people because it's so incredible. And when they finished the story, I realized, well, it's not a bad story. I mean, from all of the aspects of what is a good story, what's the moment, what happened, who were the people there, it was crafted okay. Okay. Now, I know this person said they've told this story hundreds of times. But when they were done with the story, what I was asking myself, based on the story power method and the leadership model that we follow, where do I see myself in this story? Of all the characters and non-playing characters that were mentioned in the story, who am I? What does it matter to me? What difference will this story make in my life? Is there a lesson I should have learned? Is there a metaphor that I could apply? Is there a call to action that if I do this thing, my life will be better? Or was the story only told for entertainment's sake? Got to hold on with me for a minute because I'm going somewhere really deep. The inability to read the room and apply a lesson worth learning to the end of that story may have been, I wasn't prepared for that kind of an answer for that individual. It may have been a, well, that's not the way I think kind of answer for that. Well, that's exactly why we have the Story Power Masterclass and the Story Power Academy and the 6 weeks to Story Power and the Story Power Retreat. All of these are different levels of learning stacked on top of each other. They go all the way back to who is sitting in the chair that you're talking to. Whether it's 1, 100, 1,000, 10,000 people, if you don't understand the nature of the audience you're talking to, who do you help and how, then the story you choose to tell is not going to land well. No matter how well you tell the story, your skill set is one thing. Their ability to comprehend, apply, and become better as a result of it, that's an entirely different thing. And that skill set is a leadership skill set, reading people, understanding their motivations, their interests, their concerns, their worries, their fears. See, this storytelling that says, I have a story to tell, that doesn't tap into the psychology of the listener, looking for a genuine opportunity to connect deeply and move them somewhere else, not only does it fall short of the transformation that you intended to deliver as a communicator, meaning the leadership aspect of that story has failed to lead. It also has another major problem, and that is a phenomenal competitor. A competitor that knows everything that Chase Hughes has written, everything that Andrew Bustamante has taught us about getting people to become secret spies and betray their nation and put their lives at risk and possibly their fortune and their family. All of those things that have been deployed in response to human characteristics. When someone uses a story as a motivation in their presentation, in their talk, in their gaining of buy-in, in their building of a nonprofit and raising funds, when that story has no connection to the psychology, the makeup, the motivations, the inspirations of the listener, then that story lands flat. Here's what's happening in real time, though. That big D data, that information from all of these experts who've been studying human behavior, human characteristics, the way people respond when their eyebrows move, the emotional state that they might be in, given their body language, the ability to interpret that. Police departments have been training on it for decades, maybe even centuries. Negotiators have been training on it for centuries. Leaders have been training on it for centuries. And yet somehow there's this incredible divide between the leaders who want to understand humans and the communicators who feel like, I just have something to say, you need to hear it. And when we lose that gap, here's what happens. AI tells better stories than humans. Because humans are lazy. They spend all their time kind of crafting their talk and not asking, how will this be received by the audience that I'm delivering it to? Who are the humans in the audience that I'm delivering this to? And what we end up with is, we end up with stories that don't ask, why should someone listen? Who is the target audience within this audience? Not just who showed up, but who within this audience is most likely to find the beneficial transformation of the solution that I offer? And how does this story, even if I'm here for 45 minutes and I tell 5 stories or 10 stories, who is going to hear that story and go, you're talking to me, you're talking about me, I lived through that too? See, the challenge is AI already has all the data, the ability to look at your eyebrows. By the way, if you don't think that these little devices are using the camera to read your facial expressions while you're watching a video that AI has created, you must be living under a rock. There are videos out there right now. There are stories out there right now, news stories and Facebook Reels. I don't know which one you trust more. But flock cameras, the ones that are run by Palantir, that are all over your municipalities, do you know they can read your facial expressions when you drive through the red light? Yeah. They can tell if there's stress and anxiety going on in the car. You might be reported for a domestic violence problem or a warrant that you've had for 10 years and didn't even know you had because you forgot about a speeding ticket when you were visiting somewhere else out of town and you just never paid it and you never knew you were supposed to show up in court and blah, 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 blah. The cameras have the ability to read that, and they instantly process that through AI. And AI reads your facial expressions. Some of them can get close enough to you to read your heart rate, like your Apple Watch does. They know more about you than you know about yourself sometimes. And they can compare it almost instantly to more data than you've ever researched on yourself. If you ever Googled yourself, if you haven't done that, you should probably do that. It'd be fascinating to see. Do you have a Wikipedia page? Did you create it or did somebody else? When you Google yourself, what does Google think about you? Don't just go to the Google findings of where you've done ads and that kind of stuff. Click on the one that says AI mode and read what Google thinks about you, because it's scouring everything and it will shock you what it already knows about you. But see, when you get a Facebook reel delivered to you, Meta has already done all that. And these algorithmically designed ads know what's going to hook your attention. They know what's going to cause you to stop scrolling and pay attention. And the game, the algorithm, the art of the communication tool is, if I can get you to stop long enough to hear the hook, then I'll get you into the story, then I can make an offer. Okay, Russell Brunson taught us that 4 or 5 years ago. AI has now mastered it. And AI knows more about you individually than you probably are willing to admit out loud in public. It knows what your motivations are. It knows what your causes are. It knows what makes you happy and what makes you sad. And it can watch your facial expressions, respond in real time, and even modify the story along the way. I teach communicators to do that. If you're telling a story and you see people drift off, you're telling a story and you see a tear appear, you're telling a story and you see people lean in or lean out or cross their arms, you've got to be able to read their reactions in real time and know, do I leave out that next line in the story that I've already crafted in there, but wow, 40% of my crowd is already distancing from me in the course of this 2-minute story. Many people I've worked with, they've already crafted their story. They've already got their signature talk prepared. They're ready to pounce on the stage and slam the audience with it. And what they haven't asked is, how will the audience reply to that one word, that one line? How fast can I change it? If I get through story number 3 and I realize story 3 was kind of a response from the crowd, do I go on with story 4, or do I suddenly pull that out and replace it with something else that I've crafted? See, AI has the ability to do that, and it's already doing it. In leadership roles, we've got to be able to communicate better. We've got to be able to understand the humans that we're dealing with, not just from reading the data, looking at their eyebrows and their ears and their eyes and the position of their face and their biometrics. Yeah, those are all great clues. The resources tell us they are. And the resources tell us they're pretty accurate. You know what really answers that question, who are you? Relationship. And believe it or not, with all the data that it can accumulate and all the principles that it can apply, relationship and AI, not so much. Now, it can mimic it really, really well. VR glasses, artificial reality. Yeah, there's some really strong stuff out there already. It has been for a few years. I mean, think back to, I believe it was Demolition Man with Wesley Snipes and Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone. And there's a makeout scene between Sandra Bullock and Sylvester Stallone. And he gets ready the old-fashioned way, and she gets ready a different kind of way. And then he freaks out, and he's like, whoa! By the way, that movie was made in the 80s. Yeah, that movie came out right after I got out of high school. That ought to freak you out just a little bit. They've been predicting this kind of stuff, this direction. Correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free, drop it in the comments down there if you know the actual date that Demolition Man was made with Wesley Snipes. When you understand that predictive nature of society, where's society going? What's the culture going to look like? What will our world be like when that happens? Drop that in the comments down there, and also tell me not only when it was made, but what you think about how predictive that was, because I promise you it wasn't in the last 5 years. I don't think it was in the last 15 or 20 years. I think it's older than that. But please tell me, and tell me what your opinion of that is. And then also tell me, if predictively they're already preparing us for that, what's next that they even haven't told us about? What's going to happen in our society and our culture as we distance humans? See, leadership in business right now is already at that place where AI is replacing humans. And a lot of the bigwigs are saying AI won't replace humans, but AI will replace humans who don't know anything about AI. So if you want to keep your job, be an expert in AI. I'm like, well, really all you're saying is be one step later in the replacement, because there's going to be a switchover. If we stay on the path we're on right now, there's going to be a moment where AI takes over everything humans do. The robots are already physically capable of doing all the work we do. When that merger between the ability to think, process, and produce becomes synonymous with the mechanical, physical features of making it happen, there will be a need for humans, which is kind of what they've been predicting. Let them go eat bugs. Let them watch video games. Give them a little bit of money to survive on, and we'll get by with it. Okay, so this sounds very cataclysmic, doesn't it? It sounds like we've already been outsmarted by AI. We gave it all the data of all the research we've done on what is a human and how do they think and how do they feel. Meanwhile, we can't even figure out what a woman is, but AI can determine what your blood pressure is from 100 feet away. I think we've handed over the playbook, the recipe book, all the ingredients, all the schematics to the unknown. It's just my opinion. It's just an opinion. What do we do about it, though? From a leadership standpoint, what do we do? Well, let me give you a principle that you need to apply. This principle is as old as time, although I've never heard anybody really teach on it. It's a truth like gravity. You ready? It's two-sided. It has not always been this way. It won't always be this way. It has not always been this way. It won't always be this way. Now, you can put your good or bad hat on either side of that. There are things going on in our world right now that we look at and go, this is fantabulous. We have never been so close to a cure for cancer. This is incredibly good because look at all the productivity that's just going to exponentially be better and cheaper from a labor standpoint, because robots don't have workers' unions. Robots don't need a minimum wage. If AI can outthink 10 people, that's 10 people we don't have to pay or worry about their working conditions. We'll just let the AI do the work. You could call that positive. It hasn't always been this way. That's pretty cool. It won't always be this way. I'll let you work on some of the things yourself that if we continue on this path, what will it be like? I don't know. Maybe we need to go back and watch old episodes of The Simpsons because they seem to nail some of these things way in advance. Maybe that's the CIA's predictive programming. I don't know. Could be. Here's the answer to the challenge of how do we hold on to humanity as humans? I think the answer is relationship. I'm convinced the answer is relationship. Now, what is the greatest tool of relationship? Stories. It really is. Go back to the ancient texts. Abraham, Moses. Before that, what the Jews and the Christians so hold on to as the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. You know, it was never designed to be written down necessarily. It was designed to be stories. In fact, it says this. These are stories I want you to hide in your heart and tell to your children and your children's children. Tell these stories while you're walking on the pathway. Tell these stories while you're doing the work. Tell these stories while you're living your life. Oh yeah, you can have conferences. One of the books I had on the table in the last episode, and I didn't get a chance to point it out. It's called You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. You can't teach leadership when AI is drafting all the models. Oh yeah, it can read the human, but it's not a human and it doesn't write human as effectively. Oh, it can modify in the middle. It can watch how your face responds and change, adapt the story on the fly. It might have infinite number of next lines, infinite number of next words. Again, I train my communicators, my leaders, to not go to the stage, go to the platform, go to the camera with one story in mind. Go to the camera with 100. Get in front of that crowd, the people you lead, the people you inspire, the people you motivate. Approach them with 100 different stories available so that if you find a dead spot, if you say something and the crowd doesn't respond well, you've got something else in your arsenal to convert to change the script, move on. Move to the place that moves them. AI has more data. It has more stories in the arsenal. It has more information from more humans over a longer period of time than you and I have the capacity to memorize. And because that's true, its ability to change the ammo, to change the story, to modify the communication on the fly, mid-thought, way outstrips our capacity. Honestly, that should frighten you. That should make you stop and think, if somebody has the ability to read my skills, just go watch a few videos on FBI interrogations, on the tools, the tips, and the techniques that interrogators use to get people to confess to crimes they didn't commit. These are manipulative psychological tools that work in a very high percentage of the time. Innocent people have convinced themselves that they committed a crime and confessed to a crime that they did not commit, later proven they did not commit. And they've served time as a result because the tools and the techniques of reading the human and causing the human to react in a certain way are so effective. AI has those resources now. It has the ability to read you and to write you, to change the script midstream, to change the word mid-thought, to read your emotional feedback and respond to that. I train communicators to read the crowd, to know who they're talking to. But if the answer is relationship. And the tool for that answer is story. The only way you're going to become a master at that is to become a master at reading people. AI is outstripping our pace to do that. AI is outstripping the data depth, the resources, the tools, the techniques, the information. AI already has it. What I'm saying is, even in the aspect of human relationships, you're already behind the 8 ball. You're already a little bit late to the game. I don't care if you've been a keynote speaker for 15 years making bank left and right. There's still a good chance you're going to be outsmarted very soon by a hologram. The key to holding on to humanity as we know it is to build human connection relationships. Listen closely to the stories they tell. They will tell you everything you need to know about them. Craft the stories that you tell with intentionality and purposefulness. Ask yourself, who are the people in this story? How do the people in the audience relate to the people in the story? If I'm listening, where do I see myself in your story? What am I going to get out of it? What good was telling that story? Was it just entertaining, or is there a metaphor, a lesson, and a call to action that will actually make my life better? Company picnics, family reunions, gatherings of humans, that's where these kinds of conversations have to take place. That's where leadership has to take place. And when a business abandons its leadership to AI, sure, it's going to get effectiveness. When it hands over the reins of leadership to AI, it might get more productivity. And along the way, every step along the way, we get further and further away from the value of humanity. That, my friends, only humans can do. That is our job as leaders, as communicators, to hold on to humanity. And if we don't do it, we should probably begin saying our goodbyes now. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the Story Power Academy Retreat. This Story Power Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us. Get away.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development,